Are you looking for some good Japanese learning material? Well, then you've come to the right place because I've been studying Japanese every day for over a year, and over that time, I've tried lots of different learning materials. And today, I'm going to share 7 mostly free resources that will help you quickly improve your Japanese, and the last one might surprise you. With that, let's get started. Minasan, konnichiwa, nihongo dekimasu ka? It takes a special kind of person to subject themselves to learning Japanese, which is one of the most difficult languages to learn for native English speakers. But even if you're a little crazy, that doesn't mean you're stupid. So rather than wasting your time figuring out what tools and resources to use, here are my suggestions about what you should use to get started with learning Japanese. The first thing you need is a dictionary. Without a dictionary, you'll have no idea what all these new words you're hearing even mean. A good thing about these dictionaries is that you don't need to know how to use a Japanese keyboard or draw kanji. Just spell them out how you think they sound using an English keyboard and voila! You'll have some suggestions that you can choose from. Keep in mind, it takes some time to get used to reading hiragana and kanji. But if you're reading content targeted towards younger people or beginners like you and me, then it will usually have furigana, which will show you how to read or properly pronounce the kanji that you are running into. I installed a plugin called Furiganator that I downloaded from the Chrome store. It adds furigana to kanji in any web page, so that will make it easier for you to look up the words that you don't recognize. I use 2 different dictionaries. On my phone I have Shirabe Jisho, and on my computer I use jisho.org. Both are free, but there are many others that do the same thing, so it's kind of up to you which one you use. And just an FYI, Jisho means dictionary in Japanese, which is why it's a part of the name for both of these tools. Next, you need to use a textbook to learn the basic grammar. It will introduce you to new vocabulary and get you comfortable with speaking the language out loud. It is critical that you read out loud to get used to making the sounds, and to make sure that you are learning it correctly and not just memorizing the visual appearance of the words and the kanji while skipping over how they should sound. If you focus too much on reading, you might get really good at that, but then you won't be able to understand what you're hearing, nor will you be able to speak it out loud. These days I'm working through the first Genki textbook. It's one of the most popular Japanese beginner textbooks, and there are tons of tutorials on YouTube that will help you get through the content and introduce you to how it's supposed to sound. And while Genki is a good textbook, if you're on a budget, it might be a little bit expensive. So there is a free Japanese textbook series called Irodori. Currently there are 3 books and you can download them for free. I'll put a link in the description below. The next Japanese learning resource that you need to use is Anki. Anki is critical if you are learning a new language because it helps you learn vocabulary through spaced repetition. What that means is that it shows you a word and asks you to recognize it. If you get it wrong, it keeps showing up until you figure it out. But if you get it right, it's hidden for a few days before it shows up again. When you are asked what it is the next time, if you get it right, it's hidden again, but this time for longer. And this process keeps on going. For myself, I sometimes get cards that say 3 years as the next interval. To get Anki, you need to go to the ankiweb.net website and download the app for your computer. Once you have it installed, Google Anki Shared Decks and you will find the Anki web page that lists all the shared decks. From there, you will want to look up Japanese. I'm using the Core 2000 deck, but there are lots of different options. However, I'd recommend using the Core decks because they're probably going to give you the most bang for your buck. The Anki desktop app and the Anki web service are free. There's also a free app if you're on Android, but if you want to use the service on an iPhone, you're going to need to download the official Anki app, which costs around $25. While this might be a bit expensive if you're on a budget, I'd say for me it's been one of the best investments in my Japanese learning adventure. Now that you know how to look up words, have a textbook to help you with grammar, and are using Anki to learn new words, the next step is to start reading Japanese. While this might seem like a daunting task, it is. But it's also critical for your continued improvement while learning Japanese. While it's important to learn grammar and new words, seeing them in context is going to solidify them in your memory. Plus, the more you read, the more comfortable you are going to get with the language and the easier it's going to be for you to speak it later. Ultimately, the more exposure to Japanese you get, the better off you're going to be. One of the best Japanese learning materials that I have found is NHK Easy News, which is the Japanese national broadcaster's news created specifically for young people and language learners like ourselves. It uses common words and has furigana for all the kanji. If you use the website, you can click on the words and it will open up a dictionary. However, the dictionary is in simpler Japanese, which helps if you already know some Japanese, but if you're completely new, then you're probably going to want to check out this content somewhere else. To Dai Easy Japanese takes the NHK news feed and other news sources and puts them into an app. The benefit of this app is that it has a built-in English dictionary, so when you click on a word, it will give you an English translation, which is more useful than the Japanese if you don't already know a whole bunch of words. If you get the app, it has ads, but you can pay for an upgrade. However, I'd wait till the app offers a lifetime membership for less than $20, or just get used to ignoring the ads. I read this every weekday, as there are usually 4 new NHK articles published. When I was first getting started, it took me 20 minutes or so to get through one article, and I hardly understood anything. But now I can read them in less than 5 minutes, and I mostly understand everything. But as a new learner, just know it takes time. Also, there are other sources of articles within the app, but I stick with the NHK ones because they're the most consistent, and also that's all I have time for at this point. Recently I came across Satori Reader, which is like Easy News, but instead of news, it's easily readable content with translations and a built-in dictionary. I've been using this when I have the time. Just as a note, it took me a bit of effort to get used to the writing style, but it's a great place to find more of at-your-level content to read and introduce you to new vocabulary. A key to learning with these tools, though, is to save the words that you had to look up and add them to your Anki deck later. Anytime I find a new word that seems usable, I add it to my saved words within my dictionary, and then later on I add it to my Anki deck. This does take a bit of time, but it's worth it because if you're seeing a word used regularly in the wild, then it's probably worth learning. Now that you're picking up some new words and getting familiar with how to read Japanese, this next category of Japanese learning material will help you with your listening. There are tons of people on YouTube making Japanese content. If you know how to write a topic you're interested in Japanese using kanji or kana, then Japanese content will show up. It takes some time to find the kind of content that you're looking for, but you can pretty much find anything you want. If you're just getting started, I'd suggest searching for Japanese comprehensible input, and that will kind of get you started on the right track. You can also use Netflix to find Japanese content. If you're on a VPN, that's even better, but if you don't have that option, add a new user to your account and set the language to Japanese. That way, when you find something you're interested in, there might be an option to turn on Japanese dialogue and captions. I know for sure that you can watch Seinfeld in Japanese, but keep in mind, if you are watching an originally English show, then either set the dialogue to Japanese or turn on Japanese subtitles, but don't do both of them because a lot of times they won't match up and it's going to be confusing. If you have Spotify, there are lots of Japanese podcasts that you can listen to. I listen to the Miku Real Japanese podcast, which is really easy to find, but there's also something called Nihongo Koto no wa, which will be a little bit more difficult to find because it's written in kana, which is just another way of saying Japanese characters. While listening to these, take notes, and if there are words that you don't know or recognize, look them up and add them to your Anki deck if you can. While self-studying is critical to learning Japanese, it's also important that you are getting feedback from a native speaker. Where I live, aside from my wife and daughter, no one speaks Japanese, so I've had to find teachers online to help me with the textbooks that I'm working on. I've also had other teachers where we've just had conversations and worked on my listening and speaking skills. I think the best Japanese learning resource for this is italki. However, it isn't free. I've tried about 7 different teachers, and I'd say it's better to not book a set of lessons until you've had an introductory lesson and know you can get along with the teacher. Everyone has a different teaching style, and some people are easier to get along with than others. So it's critical to meet before locking in a set of sessions. As I said earlier, I am working through Genki with my teacher. And in fact, I found a new teacher to do this with because my previous teacher, we had a more casual connection, and so it was more difficult to stick to the program and make progress with the textbook. If you don't want to spend money, HelloTalk is an option. It's a social network of sorts based around learning languages. I tried it out a bit, but didn't have much success finding people to talk with. But if you're more socially adept than I am, then you might have better success than I did. One of my real-world friends keeps in touch with multiple people every day using this service, and his reading and writing is amazing as a result. Just a note, I did mention that my wife is Japanese, and she does help me with my day-to-day questions, but she isn't a teacher, and she has her own things going on, so she can't be my Japanese teacher. I don't think this will be the case for everyone, but in all honesty, I think paying someone to teach you is a better approach, as it will be their job, and for that reason they'll take it more seriously. And finally, the last Japanese learning resource, and this one is a bit surprising, ChatGPT. Luckily, you can download the app for free and use it. ChatGPT is cool because you can take a Japanese sentence and ask it to explain the grammar, and it will give a reasonable explanation of all the parts of the sentence and what the grammar means or what it does to the sentence. I've also tried asking it to have a conversation with me in Japanese where it corrected my grammar. It did a decent job, and I was able to understand my mistakes and see what I needed to do differently. While this tool is new and still developing, it is helpful in answering those questions that just kind of come up and don't have easy explanations explanations in the textbook you're working with. To be honest though, of all the things I've worked with, this is the one that I have the least experience with, so I'd say it's still a work in progress, but it does seem like it might have some promise. So those are 7 Japanese learning materials that I'd recommend checking out to get started with Japanese. Have you used these tools? Have you found them useful? Do you think there's anything that I missed? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Click that like button and subscribe. Till next time, ja mata.